Good evening and welcome. Tonight we will be going over the history and geography of Bogota in Colombia. Don't forget that the country of Colombia is spelled Colombia, not Colu. It's different in Spanish than English. In Spanish, there's an O here, not a U. Don't forget. I've realized in my research that Colombia is probably one of the most often misspelled countries, so don't forget to know. Bogota is the capital of Colombia, and therefore the largest city in the country, and I believe it's the second largest city in South America after, of course, Sao Paulo. Second or third, I don't remember, but I want to say second. It's a big, beautiful, bustling city, nestled in, technically, the Andes Mountains. Now, it's a little hard to see on this map because it's so busy here, but in this part of South America, the Andes splits into three branches. And very appropriately, it splits into the Cordillera Occidental, Central, and Oriental. West, Central, and East, right? So Bogota is situated within the Cordillera Oriental. It sits in this neat little valley area that's often called the Bogota Savannah. And there are two very prominent mountains outside of Bogota called Montserrat and Guadalupe. And of course, we'll look at them on Google Earth later. But what I thought was very interesting that I didn't realize until I looked it up on Google Earth is that Bogota is more than just the city. The Bogota region stretches out a bit farther south and a little bit farther north than the city into a region known as the Sumapaz Paramo. And I learned a geography word. A paramo is what is the name for an alpine tundra in a tropical zone. Didn't know such a thing existed before researching this. A paramo. And we're going to take a look at that on Google Earth because it's absolutely stunning. It's so pretty. It's classic Andes landscape. It reminds me a bit of Nairobi, because one of the facts about Nairobi is that the Serengeti is just outside of Nairobi, the capital of Kenya. And here we have huge bustling skyscraper city. And just outside of it is this gorgeous mountain and plains landscape with all these neat plants and creatures. It's so neat. I can't wait to show you. But before we do that, we have to talk about the history of Bogota. This area has been settled for a long, long, long time. It's believed the first people that settled here would have done so about 12,500 years ago. And the prominent ethnic group here, at least when the Spanish arrived, they were definitely the prominent ones, were the Muisca Confederation. They are a Chibcha-speaking peoples, and the Confederation had many different, basically city centers throughout Colombia. But this was the largest and most prominent one, and they called it Bogotá. And sadly, in 1538, the Spanish came and completely destroyed the Muisca Confederation. The city was conquered by a conquistador, appropriately, named Gonzalo Jiménez de Quesada. And he renamed the area Santa Fe. And at that time, the area that they conquered here was called the New Kingdom of Granada. And once they established the Viceroyalty of New Granada, Santa Fe became the capital of that. Now, creating this new city and Spanish culture mixed in with the indigenous population after many generations creates an interesting, different population, right? The Criollo population mixed in with people literally from Spain, and the indigenous creates a lot of different ideals and just thoughts on how things should be ran. And there were many movements against pure Spanish rule. One of them, in 1781, it was an insurrection here in Bogota, inspired a young man named Antonio Nariño. He would later go and translate into Spanish the Declaration of the Rights of Man, which was a document from France, from the French Revolution, pretty much like the French version of the Declaration of Independence. All men are created equal, so on and so forth. He translated it and printed it, distributed it around Bogota. And for that, he was imprisoned and later exiled out of what was then New Granada, right? Today was Colombia. But jumping ahead in history, he would later go on to become the mayor of Bogota and a general during the civil war that followed not long after that. And I mention him because the house that he grew up in here in Bogota, the Casa de Nariño, is now the home of the president of Colombia. It's essentially the White House of Colombia, right? The 10 Downing Street of Colombia, so on and so forth, the presidential residence. It doesn't look like a little casa anymore. I'll show you on Google Earth. It definitely looks like a big monument structure with columns and all of that. But yeah, his house he grew up in is now the house of the president of Colombia. I thought that was neat. I thought I'd mention that. Jumping back in history a bit. In 1807, Napoleon invaded Spain and took over Spain. Joseph took over Spain, but details. Spain was thrown into turmoil, and therefore its colonies were thrown into turmoil, and many people in New Granada, in Santa Fe, felt something needed to be done about this. And in 1810, a movement formed known as the Junta de Santa Fe. And that movement is considered pretty much the Declaration of Independence for Colombia. It was the first major step, the first major push for independence from Spain. And it's also where the word junta comes from. I didn't realize that it came from this time in Spain's history. Hello, my cat's here. It came from this time in Spain's history when people were pushing back against the French takeover of Spain. Napoleon would completely fail. Spain would take itself back over. It's interesting how many things happen in history because of Napoleon, including Colombia's independence throughout South America. But Spain would take itself back over and be like, okay, that was a fun time, but we're going back to how things were, right? And people here were like, no. We started setting up our own independent governments while you were being invaded by Joseph Bonaparte. We want to continue independence, right, little cat? He says that's right. And the man that led the independence movement, not just in Colombia, but Venezuela, in Ecuador, in many parts of South America, was Simón Bolívar. And we're going to talk a lot more about him next week because we're going to talk about the Bolivar departments throughout those countries next week. But he led the large push toward independence. In 1819, he fought the Battle of Boyacá, which we'll talk about Boyacá in a couple more weeks on my channel. look forward to that. Be sure to subscribe so you won't miss out. Simon Bolivar captures the city. Spanish control was no more. In 1821, Bogota, Simon Bolivar renamed it to Bogota, which is the Spanish version of the original indigenous name, which was Bogotá, right? In 1821, Gran Colombia was formed, which was a union between what's now Colombia, Venezuela over here, Ecuador over here, and Panama, which you can't see, it's just up there. Gran Colombia. That fell apart. That collapsed within a decade. And in 1830, Colombia became New Granada. It would go through a lot of name changes, as you can tell. It's not called anything like that. It's just Colombia now. But Bogota was made capital of New Granada after the collapse of Gran Colombia. And it would remain the capital ever since. Now, Colombia's history has been quite tumultuous since independence, since the breakup of Gran Colombia. Bogota is no exception. There were many different civil wars. There were many rebellions, insurrections, things like that. Conflicting political parties, essentially. Liberal versus conservative fighting. Literally fighting against each other for how the country should be ran. There were many protests in the capital, of course. There was a lot of fighting. There was a lot of... I'm trying to think of YouTube-friendly words. Some very not good times in Bogota. Probably one of the worst ones was actually in 1948. In April 1948, there was a huge riot called the... let me check my notes, make sure I get this right. The Bogotazo, I believe. Which was a pushback against a liberal leader who was killed. And a lot of the city was destroyed during these riots. And the unrest during this would pretty much continue until 1958. But just know that there were many protests and riots and uprisings before then. And there were quite a few after. Peace never really came to Colombia and Bogota until like the 1990s. And really what I mean is like stability, you know. No longer a threat of civil war just around the corner if politicians disagreed. But the country is relatively stable today. Bogota is very stable today. It's very safe to visit. Not the safest, but safe to visit. And that, in a nutshell, is the history of Bogota. Now, there's a lot of things to show you in this city, and I can't wait. I hope I remember all of them. If there's any places that you think that I should mention, be sure to drop them down in the comments. My chair agrees. Drop them down in the comments so that we can all visit them on our own time on Google Earth. But in the meantime, let me go grab my tablet and we will explore the city together. Let's go. Here we are in Bogota. But let's start by zooming out so you can see exactly where we are in the world. Here we are in northern South America. You can see Panama there, connecting it to Central America. You can see Venezuela, Ecuador, Peru, Brazil, the green of the Amazon here. And here's Bogota, which you can see the mountains here. Occidental, Central, which is a little tinier, and the Oriental. Let's go. Actually, I know where we'll start. We're going to start where it all began, but I have to find it. It is, goodness, over here, right here. So this is the plaza, how it looks today, but this is where Bogota was founded in the 1500s as Santa Fe. This is where it all began, so you can see some of the old colonial style buildings here. All pretty decorated as well. This is where the city began. There's beautiful street art in this city. We'll look at some more later. Gorgeous. But this is where the city as we know it today first started. And nearby over here, here's Simon Bolivar's house. When he was leading Gran Colombia, this is where he lived. And like I said, we'll talk a lot more about Simon Bolivar next week because we're going to 3 different regions named after him. So prepare yourselves for Bolivar week. He's coming. But yeah, this is where he lived when he led, was he president? Is that his official title? I'm not sure, but he led Gran Colombia. That's where he lived. Here is the real heart of the city, the Plaza de Bolivar. Everything is around here. Except it didn't go. It didn't. There we go. Plaza de Bolivar. This is where all the government buildings are. The beautiful historic church here. This is the heart of the city. And in a sense, the heart of Colombia. Let me show you around. I guess we'll start at the cathedral here. Although I'm going to show you some pretty cool churches also here in the city. This is the big main Catedral Primada de Colombia. Look at that organ. Holy moly, that must sound amazing. Amazing. Here's the Capitol building, which looks very like Greek inspired, like a lot of capital cities around the world tend to do. It's a throwback to, oh how cute, a throwback to the founders of democracy, right? And here, I don't remember what I want to show you next. Is this? Oh yeah, this place is great. This is a museum, but it's an old church. Absolutely stunning. Look at this. Holy moly. This is a beautiful building. My goodness, fantastic. And there's incredible art from all over. Even some indigenous art by the looks of it. But in this gorgeous old church. My goodness. So beautiful. That's a gorgeous building. Colonial Museum. I don't think I looked at the Colonial Museum, did I? I looked at a bunch of museums. I can't remember if I looked at this one. Oh, I think I did. That's pretty, but I have better museums to show you. What else? Like that one's not as. I mean, it's fine. It's just not a good slideshow, right? Archaeological museum was interesting. I can't remember. But oh, that's cool. That's a neat little guy. Wow. But yeah, there's all kinds of museums here. We have the Botero Museum, which we looked at some Botero art when we talked about Medellin, but this art style is just very like big and bloated. Big and bloated people, big and bloated birds. Look at the Mona Lisa. Just very big hand. Just big, there's a big cat, just supersized. Very distinct art style, right? There's a nun. Looks like Columbus, maybe. I'm not sure. Look at this. All kinds of just things that are just big. That's Botero style. Very iconic for Colombia. I'm trying to remember all the things I wanted to show you. Oh, the gold museums near here. Where's the gold museum? Right here. The gold museum. Because, of course, the gold is very plentiful here. The indigenous peoples created all kinds of stunning crafts and things out of gold. And thankfully, we have some preserved, some stonework too. Oh, that's a mummy. I'll skip past that. But it's pretty remarkable because most of the gold artifacts from places like this were taken to Spain and melted down, or were taken by pirates on their way to Spain and melted down. So the fact that we have still so many little trinkets, little artifacts from that time is pretty remarkable. I think there's a church nearby here, yes, that kind of shows you what happened to a lot of that gold. Look at this. A huge golden altar. So yeah, a lot of the items of the people who lived here was melted down and turned into things like this, which is still spectacular, right? A lot of the gold items you see in Spain and Portugal are items that were melted down. Pretty interesting. Think of anything else to show you before I leave this area. I'm not sure. I feel like I'm forgetting something. But that's alright. But yeah. Why don't we look at something more natural? Let's look at Montserrat, which you can see from the 3D here. There's a big old peak. Up at the top here is a church and like a little community, which I guess is for the tourists who hike up here or take the little, what's it called, the people mover guy up here. The thing that I wouldn't do, I'd be too chicken. This guy, ski lift the friend to the church up here. It's a little community. We can have restaurants and go shopping. And from what I can tell, it looks like there are these really beautifully made statues that you walk in order. See, there's all the crafts for sale. Excellent. You walk in an order and you see the crucifixion. And these very well-made statues. They're very beautiful. Look at this jungle up here. Wow. So yeah, there's lots of... Let's look at some of the views, the miradors up here. Here's one. So you can go up here and look down at the big, beautiful city here. There's the church. Kind of hoping to see the views, but we're seeing more of what it looks like on top of the hill here, or the mountain, I should say, but that's still neat. No more city skylines, but that's okay. You get the idea. You can kind of see it from here, can't you? Big view of the city. Let's head over. Let me zoom out so I can get my bearings. Big park here, of course, named after Simon Bolivar. It's really beautiful. Big old green space. Oh, did you see the bird? Oh, crane there. Ride your bike through it. Bring your pup. See the beautiful sky here. A rainbow. Everything that I've read about Bogota talks about how much it rains here because it's in such high elevation that it's very normal to just carry an umbrella with you. You never know when it's going to start pouring. Peppa Pig's there. What's she doing there? But yeah, there's all kinds of different events there. If I recall, there was a neat slideshow around here. Yes, of the graffiti. Here's the graffiti district, which I love street art. It's so remarkable. There's such a difference between like people tagging things, which is pretty creative in and of itself, and street art, which is just remarkable, which is just incredible art that's so accessible to everyone. So I wish all the tags weren't covering up this really neat art. And, you know, it's not meaningless, you know, like just regular graffiti writing their names. It's all very meaningful. It all is poignant and trying to convey what the artist is trying to tell us through their work. It's so pretty. Look at the colors here. This is fun. Pretty remarkable. Lots of tigers. I'm not complaining. Just interesting. Lots of tigers there. Oh, the National Museum of Colombia. I should show you that. That's an important museum to look at. Beautiful courtyard here. Some more incredible gold pieces. I'm sure this is in some old hacienda or some sort, you know, that belonged to some wealthy Spanish family once upon a time. Wow, that's cool. Wow, look at all the different art. The different art styles, too. Printing press there. Big Botero bird. Oh, how neat. And some indigenous art as well. Yeah, there's so much to see here. If you can think of anything else, let me know. Oops, I dropped a pin. But there's all sorts of things to see here. Highly recommend you go through and explore for yourself. But I promised you some neat sights down here. Let's see, what should we look at first? All of these slideshows down here are really interesting. Let's look at this reserve one. And be like, this is Bogota. Can you believe? Little flowers. Beautiful night sky. This is part of Bogota. So all of this big, empty, beautiful wilderness. Not empty because it's teeming with life, but just interesting. No huge buildings, no traffic, no city sounds. Sumapaz. Just really incredible nature that you can really only find in the Andes. It's very distinct. All these pretty trees. Like, it's a whole forest, isn't it? With all these neat cacti down here. Succulents. Streams and lakes and cattle, of course. Look at this plant. How fascinating is that? Let's look at this slideshow. If it'll let us. There we go. The Sumapaz National Park. Yeah, this is very Andes coded. All of these neat succulent plants around all of this green, big skies. Yeah, that's gorgeous. That is amazing. To think this is Bogota, you guys. This is still in the capital city, technically. This beautiful park. So you see what I mean when I'm like, it's like how Nairobi's next to the Serengeti. Bogota's next to Sumapaz. Interesting. Wow, look at all the cacti up there, too. Absolutely fascinating. Oh, this poncho, very classic. obsessed with this landscape. It's so pretty. And like, yeah, when I was first, like, let me hop on Google Earth and research and see what I should show them. And I was like, what is all this? This is still Bogota. I was like, I can't believe it. I kept double checking to make sure. I'm like, yeah, this is still technically part of the city. All of this gorgeousness. Look at that. There's some crazy plants in the Andes. Some nice little moo friends too. Well, look at that. Oh my gosh, this is so pretty. All of like this red shrub. And then these green cacti dotting it. That's amazing. Did you see the cliffs? It's so pretty here. Oh my gosh, and at night. Pretty amazing. Look at all the little plant friends there dotting the landscape. These little flowery friends. Absolutely stunning. But I think I'm going to end it there. So thank you so much for watching tonight's video. If you enjoy this style of content, please consider subscribing. This is an ongoing series on my channel. Next, we're going to be heading over to Guinea in Western Africa, which unfortunately there's pretty much like no Google Earth slideshows there. So we won't be having a tablet section, but we will be having a topple section. So be sure to subscribe so you won't miss out. If you've never heard Topple the ASMR elephant, you're gonna want to. Please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and drop me a comment down below if you're still awake and enjoyed this video. I do hope that you found this video to be relaxing and educational, and I hope that you have a good